the government committed to do three things. They're going to take the idea of an NDIS to the Council of Australian Governments, which is where all the states and territories and the federal government come together to talk about things that they want to coordinate across the country. So the Council of Australian Governments met not long after the report was released, and they all agreed that an NDIS was very important and that they would begin work immediately to start looking at some general principles about how the NDIS should look. And they would come up with those by the end of 2011 through a committee that's going to have treasurers from all the different governments on it, and it's going to have disability managers from all the different governments on it as well. So they're going to come up with some broad principles, and then they're going to look at all of the things that the Productivity Commission's recommended, and against those principles and sort of against what everybody, all the state and territory governments and the federal government thinks is acceptable. So what's in the PC report? All of it may get through, some of it may get through. It's all just recommendations at the moment, so we don't know for sure if what they've recommended is what it's going to look like. So the Council of Australian Governments is going to talk about the work that's happened at their next meeting in early 2012. And that's, I think, when we'll start to get some ideas of exactly how the governments think this should look. So the government's also agreed to set up an advisory council, forming not people not from government. So it will be headed up by a man called Dr. Jeff Harmer, who has worked for the Department of Families, Housing, Community Services and Indigenous Affairs. And it will have a couple of government nominees on it. So Rhonda Galvalley, who chairs the National People with Disability and Carer Council, will be on it. And she's a person with a disability, and she's been very involved in the campaign for an NDIS. And a man called Bruce Bonahady, who is the chair of URALA, he has a child with a disability.
A lot of us know
Bruce. Okay.
I'm a very good friend of his son and a very good friend of Bruce Bonahady myself.
Okay, cool. So that's good, because often people will say, who's Bruce?
We went to school with their son.
Okay, cool. So Bruce and Rhonda will be the government nominees to that advisory committee. And that committee will work with the COAG group, with all the government ministers and treasurers, to give them some advice from a community perspective. We don't know yet who else is going to be on that committee and how that's going to work. We think that within both of those groups there will be some subcommittees to look at very specific issues, because there's a lot of ground that has to be covered before the NDIS can come in. The other thing the government has done is actually put a very small amount of money towards $10 million, which is relatively small compared to the $6 billion or so extra money they're going to be putting into the NDIS eventually, to start doing some initial work around some of the more complicated things that will have to be sorted out for the NDIS to go ahead. So that's about looking at how you assess people. It's about looking at how you make sure that there's enough people in the disability support workforce, so that everybody, when you have more people who can get support, there's enough support workers to go around, and that they're all skilled. And about making sure that the disability sector, so that's not just service providers but us as community groups, have an understanding of what the NDIS is, what it's going to mean, and how it's going to go forward. So from here, at the moment, there's a lot of work that's being shifted over to the government side of things. And what's really important is two separate sets of actions. One is around the Every Australian Counts campaign. The campaign is still going. Everybody sees, the acceptance of the NDIS as a good thing, but as Bill Shorten explained it to me when I saw him just after the announcement, this is the first of many steps, and it's like the Star Wars trilogy. I'm really glad he didn't use Twilight, but he said, you know, like you have the first movie, and then you have the second one, and then you have the third one, you have all of these steps along the way. So it's important that the campaign still gets backing from people, because we don't want some of the governments to start getting shaky about it, and we want people in the broader community to become engaged as well, so that, you know, even once all of the government stuff's been sorted out, we could run into the problem of people in the community going, wait, that's a lot of money to spend on disability, I don't really want to see that. So we want people to understand why we're doing this in the first place and why it's really important. So if you're not already signed up on the Every Australian Counts website as a supporter, go and do that. They're aiming for 100,000 supporters, and at the moment they have 70,000. If you are already involved, there's still things you can do. You can let other people you know about the campaign through Twitter or Facebook, or if you've got a blog, through that. You can go and visit your local MP, which is the action you're asking people to take at the moment. And on their website, they've got a whole list of all the MPs and whether they've been visited or not. And you can get information from the campaign about, you know, what sort of things you might want to say to your local MP and what you might want to bring up with them, as well as your own story and talking about why it's important for you. And the third thing, as I said, is just getting the community to be aware. So if you're doing things like, you know, if you're doing uni or school assignments and you think there's a place for you to write about the NDIS or do a speech about it in class, that's a fantastic thing to do, to start getting other people to think about it. The other side of things that we really want people to start thinking about is the policy side. There's a lot of questions that still haven't been answered. And the thing I really wanted to say to you guys today is that, you know, you are pretty much one of the only funded and organised groups of young people with disability across Australia at the moment, right? So you're experts about the experience of young people. And you're experts, you have to be experts about what this is going to mean for young people and what the NDIS can and should be doing for you. So, you know, there's a lot of issues that are going to affect young people, especially with the NDIS. So, for instance, they're saying that education will be outside of the NDIS, but, you know, there's going to be some tricky areas. So if people need personal care workers to assist them and they want to go and have piano lessons, that's not necessarily part of a school or uni or in case, but does that fit under the NDIS? How do we make sure that young people learn about the choices that they need to make under an NDIS and gradually get the opportunity to do that, so that you're not just suddenly 18 and if somebody said to you, here, hey, you've got responsibility for all of your supports now, go make decisions. Those sorts of things are really important, and it's really good for you guys to sit down and actually start thinking about maybe becoming familiar with the report and thinking about how it will affect your life, and being able to come up with some ideas about how you want it to look. And then when you've done that, maybe coming up with some case studies or some policy positions and taking them more broadly to groups like AFDO could help you, and some of the other national peaks could be supportive of your positions as well. You could start talking to politicians about what it's going to mean for young people. So from your perspective, I'd be looking very much at figuring out how this is going to work for young people and then working to get that on the agenda. Does anyone have any questions?
I know Jess is on the phone.
I've been dying to say something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So I'll let you finish first. I didn't realise that YDAS was the only sort of body that has young people with disabilities. So I guess from that point of view, I feel kind of privileged that I'm here and whatever. But
We share your feelings at present.
sorry.
We share your feelings.
Yeah. But I guess what I was thinking, or what I wanted to raise is that basically my sort of project, once my play is finished, is to try and get especially young people without disabilities to see this as an important piece of policy that needs to be adopted, and not just adopted sometime in the future, but adopted ASAP. And so I've been sort of slowly trying to figure out ways that the NDIS can be publicised at places like universities and things like that. But my sort of specific concrete update, I suppose, was that I have a friend who I met at university, and she studied politics or something, and anyway, she wants to work in the sort of advocacy or like community development or like that type of sector. And what I thought was that if she was to get a job at one of the sort of, at some sort of official disability organisation, she could be, or either her or someone like her could be the sort of sole, you could give them a title, sort of person that would be in charge of getting more young people involved in the campaign. So, because I think that, whilst there is YDAS as a sort of organisation, that it might be good to have, someone who's the equivalent of James or John Del Bosco, but who's responsible for getting young people involved. So, yeah, I just, I would love for her or someone like her to do that. Yeah, I guess we've been doing stuff with the Oak Tree Foundation as well. Yeah, anyway, so that's about it.